It's 6 a.m. in the Mile High City on this Friday, August 1st. Bill, can you believe we made it to August?
I can't believe it's already August. This is crazy. What the hell happened to July? I don't even know. I'm not even ready. I'm still writing the 7 thing and working on it. I'm getting the 8 thing.
And this month means the kids are back in school, so.
Yes, been reminding them of
wrapping up.
Oh, I saw, this is just a side note. I saw there's a charter school, I believe it's in Inglewood, that on Monday, kids are supposed to report to class. On Wednesday, they told all the parents, sorry, we're not opening. Imagine that as a parent. The Wednesday before the Monday. So it's Wednesday of this week.
Okay, I was going to say, they got Monday. 2 days into school, and they're just like,
no, they got 3 days before school's supposed to start. And now parents are like, I got to find somewhere to stick my kid. That is nuts. Imagine there are a lot of parents out there. I feel for you. That's a lot of stress. That is a lot of stress. Yeah. So
was it an established charter school? Or was it
I don't remember the name of it. I think it was somewhat established. I mean, it had been there at least a couple of years to get, to have kids sign up. So it wasn't just brand new. But yeah, I was thinking about that because I've got, we've got the kids getting ready to go back to school. We'll talk about it at some point. My youngest is changing schools and going to a charter school. So yeah, joining you. I know.
Big deal.
You persuaded me. It's a big deal, my friend. It's a big deal. She's super happy. She's super happy. And so, but I've got everybody else in my family is getting ready to go back. So a couple of them are already back putting things together. I was talking to my oldest, who works in the Cherry Creek school system, and he was talking about going back in. He's like, I don't know why I have to be there this week because kids aren't here, etc. And I'm like, no. I had to tell him because again, NFL returned last night, the Hall of Fame game. I was telling him, no, this is preseason. This is where you guys are working at your teamwork. You figure out what the systems are. You figure out what the policies are. You figure out where you want someone, where you're going to need help. You kind of have a game plan. And so it's like, oh, okay, preseason. Yeah, so this is what it is. Yeah, they're going through preseason right now. So, yeah.
Well, it is August 1st. You've tuned into the Jeff and Bill show, and we've got a lot to talk about today. We're going to be joined a little bit later by Michael Braithwaite, who covered the James Craig trial from beginning to close, was in the courtroom when the verdict was read, saw the reaction from the families, heard all the statements related to his sentencing. He'll give us kind of the closing bookend, at least of this chapter, with regards to the James Craig trial. Reporter from the Denver Gazette, Michael Braithwaite, will be joining us here in just a minute. In the 7 o'clock hour, the presidential fitness test is back. Could you pass it? Is this good for the kids to be doing some push-ups, sit-ups, chin-ups, some 1-mile runs as well? Donald Trump bringing that back. That was a hot topic of conversation among our family yesterday as we kind of looked at what some of the requirements are and where you would fall in the percentages. So the presidential fitness test is back. The Thomas Kincaid Company. You remember this guy?
Yes.
Remember all those paintings, Bill?
Yeah. It was art in the mall. That's what it was. Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yep.
Dude, this was wild. This sent me down a rabbit hole because this is arguably the most popular Christian conservative painter of all time. Nearly 1 in 20 homes in America had a Thomas Kincaid painting in it. And it appears, that the family is quite woke and is opposing a lot of Donald Trump's policies, which I found interesting because Thomas Kincaid, who's no longer alive, was a well-known, well-established, well-regarded Christian conservative painter. So what's happening to the family and their fight with Kristi Noem, DHS? Kind of wild.
Yeah.
8 o'clock hour, Bobby Daniels going to join us, Mesa County Commissioner, on these unfunded mandates that the state of Colorado is forcing upon local communities. George Brockler will be with us during the 9 o'clock hour on this crazy case out of Douglas County with a dog, a canine, a military police canine that got out of its cage and attacked its neighbor during the 2-year-old's birthday.
Yeah. That's just, and this is, again, what hurt me inside the story is the harm to the 2-year-old, and what this incident has done is basically, in my mind, has the chance to spawn a lifelong fear of dogs. Because what I keep telling people all the time, and I've talked to a number of dog owners, with my dog, I never approach very small children with the dog. I wait for them to ask, and I make sure the dog stays away from them, simply because of perspective. As adults, we forget how short you are as a 3, 4, 5, and 6-year-old. We forget that perspective of the world. When you're between the ages of like 2 and 6, the average dog is eye height or taller.
Yeah.
So
right.
imagine if we were walking
size
down
of
the
a
street.
horse.
Yes, exactly. And it's like in Game of Thrones, and you have dire wolves walking around. So and you have things where those dogs, while they look, they're your family pet and everything else. If you look at medium to large size dogs, and of which this canine handler, it's a large dog, it's a shepherd, or one of the other ones, I forget the other derivative that they use, but those teeth are going to be the size of some of those children's fingers. So again, think about the idea of a large, furry animal that is eye height and has teeth that are as large as your fingers. That is a dangerous animal when you're that age. That the perception. And so she had this thing come over the fence and attack her during the birthday party. That's scary. And also what's even more scary is what the court decision was.
Yes.
That's frightening.
Essentially how the deputy, because this was
Yes.
a deputy who worked in Jefferson County, escaped any type of responsibility.
Yes. And what he used. And again, we talk about the law of unintended consequences. When we get to we're talking about this, imagine how this can be applied in other cases, and how people that are upset at the police can use this as an example to take stuff away from them. And we'll talk about how, because I think this could be something where someone that is wanting to, and again, is looking at constraining police power, they will point to this case as an example. This is a dangerous one in the future for a number of reasons, and we'll talk about it.
Well, George Brockler, very concerned about this, and we're going to be talking to him in the 9 o'clock hour. So this is a conversation. It's an entire morning you're not going to want to miss. We got a whole lot to cover, including this final chapter, at least of this current time with James Craig and the courtroom drama and all that. We're going to talk with Michael Braithwaite from the Denver Gazette here in just a second. But now it's time for news and comment with Mr. Blake Olson.
Blake Olson.
Blake Olson, news and comment.
Good morning, TGIF 57 with some clouds overhead. Just another great morning. Get out there, take a walk this morning, expecting a high of 86 today. This portion of the news sponsored by Pastor Camp Heating and Air Conditioning at 303-777-1234 to learn more about special savings opportunities on Lennox equipment. Our top story, 21-year-old Damian Britt has been arrested following the shooting in Denver's Lodo neighborhood that injured 4 people early Sunday. Britt was taken into custody on 4 counts of attempted murder after a fight near 20th and Market turned violent. Tough on crime is the only answer to all of this garbage. Great job by the police getting him. Patriots like Intelligence Director Tulsi Gabbard exposing the corrupt frauds.
Very clearly, when you look at all of the Russia rhetoric that came from Hillary Clinton throughout that campaign, if President Trump then, as President-elect Trump, had seen a president's daily brief. This is an article where the intelligence community views it as being a very highly esteemed product, that only the best of intelligence gets into this president's daily brief. If they had published that document, which said again that, I'm paraphrasing, that Russia had neither the intent nor capability to influence the election in favor of Donald Trump or either candidate, then President-elect Trump would have seen that and said, hey, see, this is what I knew all along, yet Hillary Clinton's been saying all of these things and making all of these allegations against President Trump and claiming foreign interference. For years, Hillary Clinton claimed that she would have won the election and been for Russia.
Garbage. Led by creatures like Hillary Clinton, the commies jammed the Russian hoax down our throats almost 10 years ago. Many, like Mike Benz, say that she broke the law spying on U.S. citizens within the country.
It's just awfully good that someone with the temperament of Donald Trump is not in charge of the law in our country.
Because you'd be in jail.
Secretary Clinton.
Yes, one of the greatest comebacks of all time. Moments of, yes.
Did you see that Brennan and Clapper were in the New York Times with an opinion piece?
I did not see that one.
Yeah.
Is that this morning?
It was a few days ago, July 30th.
Okay.
And it's titled, "Let's Set the Record Straight on Russia in 2016.
Oh,
and they
Lord.
make the argument that, this is actually politicized from Tulsi Gabbard, from Donald Trump. It's all them that are politicizing this issue. And I just pointed out, and I think it's important to point this out, okay? So Brennan and Clapper were 2 of the 51 that signed the statement saying that the very real Hunter Biden laptop was Russian disinformation, right? And then in 2025, they're writing articles condemning Tulsi Gabbard and Donald Trump for developing fictitious narratives and distorting intelligence.
Wow. Look in the mirror. The projection is incredible. And they get up, I mean, especially Brennan, man. He's getting up there, and I'm sure he's basically echoing what he wrote in what you read in the New York Times, but he's been on 2 or 3 programs already and just confusing everyone. And there's softballs left and right from MSNBC, and he's just talking, just babbling on, and it's hard to follow all this. I mean, this is what we do, but for him, what he's doing, he gets up there, shows his little personality, looks like this innocent old guy, and people really don't know what's happening, and he just muddies it up as much as possible, and then just basicking describes what they did, like what you were just talking about.
Well,
it's amazing.
To me, seeing a lead editorial or opinion piece in the New York Times having to address this, they would not be doing this if the punches weren't landing.
Exactly.
So Tulsi's landing, Trump's landing, J.D. Vance is landing right now, and people want clarity on this. They're willing to explore, the referrals to the DOJ and what this was all about. And there seems to be a lot of smoke, and whenever there's smoke, there's likely some fire. So people want to see this through. These guys are scrambling. That's how I see it. I mean, an opinion piece in the New York Times, bro. I wrote on X, woot, woot, you hear that? That's the train Trump of justice coming.
Get on board. Here we go. No, I love how they're laying it out also, because that's the only way the average American's they're gonna absorb it. So so it becomes a cleaner, easier to communicate story, because initially it's difficult to describe, but the bottom line, all they do is lie. They just freaking lie and commit treason. Hey, here's what you ever wondered what 2 dummies sound like talking to each other? No, I'm not talking about you. And
say you and me?
Yeah, exactly. Well, let's listen to 2 other dummies talk to each other.
A very hopeful and dynamic presidential candidate for the 107 days that you had to run. To hear you say that it's broken, to hear you say that our systems aren't strong enough, is harrowing.
Well, but it's also evident, isn't it?
No, it is.
And it is.
It is harrowing. I mean,
and it is.
I mean, there's almost no curse word bad enough.
But it doesn't mean we give up. That's not.
Oh my God. Colbert and
the system is broken. Here you have. Here we had a presidency where the guy had really significant cognitive challenges, and then conservatives bring it up, and the system lies about it the entire time, and then it gets exposed during this debate. And then
Yeah.
the system ushered the old man out. You see that
Yes.
was George Clooney. Then the system picked Kamala Harris.
Yes,
to
jammed
become-
her in there.
Right. And then the system effort to Obamafy her and Oprahfy her, right? First
Right.
black female president ever. And she's your
Exactly.
gal pal. I sat there, watched the whole thing at the DNC. The system was in full engagement, full aggressive mode to try to get Kamala Harris elected, and then to hear them say, "There's a system. Yeah, you use this system."
She was number 4 in the system. You know, it was.
Exactly.
I mean, let's try to get Obama his 4th term here, and let's jam her in there. She's about 4 or 5 on the power list there. Yeah, it was their system, but she's talking once again. Here we go. Projection. That's what they do best. They just, and American people, I mean, I'm talking about lefties in the crowd. Yeah, that's exactly right, the system. And the lady shouldn't have been, 10 miles from the stinking White
Nomination,
House. Yeah, exactly. Speaking of democracy, right? Here's Kamala Khan talking earbuds.
I like these kinds of ear pods that have the thing because I've served on the Senate Intelligence Committee. I have been in classified briefings, and I'm telling you, don't be on the train using your ear pods and thinking somebody can't listen to your conversation. I'm just telling you, that's a little bit more secure.
Wow. Here, she continue laughing. Jeez. Okay, one more. I have to play one more. Little Dougie Emhoff, her husband.
I mean, there's a lot of personal stuff in the book. I mean, poor Dougie.
You're blowing the lid off of Doug? What's going on?
For example, my birthday's in October. The election's in November. You see where I'm going?
No, we don't.
And Dougie kind of dropped the ball on my big birthday.
He didn't get you anything?
Oh, you have to read the book.
Oh, I can't wait. That should be good. Burr Charlesworth, accused in the shooting of ex-Broncos receiver Josh Reynolds, has pleaded guilty to conspiracy to commit first-degree assault. Charlesworth is one of 9 people charged in connection to the October attack, which police say happened after Reynolds left a strip club in Glendale. Prosecutors called the shooting a coordinated ambush. The U.S. Special Envoy to the Middle East has arrived in Gaza. Steve Witkoff was in Israel on Thursday to meet with Prime Minister Netanyahu and seen arriving this morning in Gaza. That is good news. The DJT administration nailing down its list of reciprocal tariffs on dozens of countries. 47 signed an executive order increasing tariffs on products from around 70 countries. Colorado's Joe Neguse and other Democrats suing the DJT administration. The lawsuit alleges illegal obstruction of lawmakers' access to federal immigration detention centers. Lefty Jason Crow says he was denied access into the Aurora Detention Center last week. Oh, what a hero. 2 suspects that attempted to run over an ICE agent during a detention operation in Black Forest Thursday are still at large after the agent fired 3 shots into their vehicle. The suspects got out, went on the run. Law enforcement officials continue to search for the fugitives. No one was injured. Ukrainian President Zelensky calling for regime change in Russia just hours after a deadly Russian missile and drone attack kills 31 people in Kiev. NFL has returned. Hall of Fame game last night. It's preseason football.
We will have Rob back with us to start our season, but we are so thrilled for Rob and Lindsay. That pass is taken away. Spectacular takeaway by Miles Purchase on the intended catch for Dominic Levitt.
Yeah, the Chargers win, but that was one of the big plays because that's one of the former great Colorado athletes from the state of Colorado, Cherry Creek grad, Miles Purchase, undrafted rookie trying to make the team with the INT. Has a chance to make the team, but a long shot. But he is one of the greatest all-around athletes that I have seen come out of the state of Colorado. And it's not a takeaway, by the way. Tirico. It's an interception. Okay, there's a difference. I'm sorry. It's nice takeaway. Oh, it's a takeaway. No, that was a pick. That was an interception. I don't think he was paying much attention, and I can't say that I blame him. Late in a preseason game, Chargers and the Lions. Broncos training camp continues today, and tomorrow they are off on Sunday. Pittsburgh in town to take on the Rockies tonight. 53 in Aurora, 54 in Golden, 57 in Denver. Jeff and Billy continue, and it is Friday. TGIF. Blake Olson, News Talk 710 KNUS.
It's a different day, but the weather forecast is about.
Well, he was in the courtroom providing coverage from beginning to end. Michael Braithwaite, reporter with Denver Gazette, joins us this morning. Good morning, Michael. Thanks for joining the Jeff and Bill Show.
Yeah, good morning.
Yeah, good morning. Thank you for having me.
Wild time. I mean, you covering the James Craig trial beginning to end. You were in the courtroom when the verdict was read. You saw the reaction from James Craig, the dentist now convicted and sentenced for poisoning his wife. And then you saw the reactions of the family members. Describe for our listeners what you saw that day.
Yeah, certainly. To start off, when the verdict was read, Craig himself wasn't very emotive, which I thought was pretty notable. He bowed his head a little bit, but he didn't cry. He didn't, his facial expression didn't change very much. And his family wasn't, terribly emotive either. I think, people were sniffling, people were crying a little bit in the gallery, but I think this was something that, in my perception of it, kind of given everything they'd said throughout the trial and before and certainly afterwards, this was something that they had already kind of come to terms with. I think many of his family knew that this was going to happen. He was going to be found guilty, and it seemed like many had already made their peace with it to some extent.
Wow. And then the family got to respond to the verdict and make some statements regarding James Craig. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, certainly. So right after, both parties requested immediate sentencing, which was interesting in this case. Just given how long the trial had been, but it made sense. I mean, all of the family was there for the verdict, and sentencing can sometimes take a few months to happen. So it made a little bit more sense in this case. And before the sentencing, family members were able to go up and kind of share some short statements to the judge about why they believed he should get a longer or shorter sentence. All of them advocated for a longer sentence, and I thought the more powerful statements came from his two children, Tolliver and Miriam, his oldest son and his oldest daughter. Miriam actually testified during the trial, and it was during those statements on Wednesday, right before the sentencing was read, when Craig began to actually show emotion. And he, especially during Miriam's statement, he broke down, he started sobbing very hard, so hard one of the defense attorneys actually had to console him. And so that was very powerful. And Miriam, she had a really good line when she was reading her statement. She said she was supposed to be able to trust her dad. He was supposed to be her hero, but instead he'll forever be the villain in her book, which I thought was a pretty powerful bookend to the 2-week trial.
We're talking with Michael Braithwaite with the Denver Gazette. Michael, you're talking about the kids giving comment and reflection on James Craig, their dad, now convicted and sentenced in the murder of their mother, his wife, Angela Craig. Michael, what was it that the kids said that you think connected to James Craig in a way that the kind of formal proceedings didn't?
It's probably something, kind of along those lines. I think, it's the other people who spoke, and during the formal proceedings were siblings of Angela's. And obviously, while Craig has a connection to those people, he married into this family. And so, I do think there might be maybe less of a, strong connection there as opposed to his children, which by many accounts he loved very much. And, even members of his family, while, talking about what he had done to his wife, did note that. And so I do think that was a hard thing for him to go through, is hearing his children have to talk about how difficult it was to not only lose their mom, but then, lose their dad in a much different sense. I believe, the impact of that might have carried a greater emotional toll.
Wow. That's Michael Braithwaite with the Denver Gazette. Michael, was there any sense that any of the kids by that point were still supporting their dads? I mean, we see that sometimes in like the Barry Morphew case. I think the daughters are still somewhat supportive of Barry, but at any point during the trial, did the kids stand by their dad? Because he had something like 6, maybe 8 kids. But
yeah, he's got 6 children.
6 children. Sometimes the kids will stand by dad or mom and just go, I think there's reasonable doubt here. I'm willing to defend them. Did you ever see that at all in this case? What about the other 4 kids? You mentioned 2 that made statements. Were they present? Give us some insight you might have seen on that.
Yeah, definitely. So other than the 2 who made statements, there was only one other of the children who made anything public or made any public statements during the trial. It was his daughter, Annabelle, who testified a few weeks back. And no one ever defended his actions, and particularly not Annabelle, who she was the daughter whom he had listed to try and help fabricate evidence and plant evidence that his wife, her mother, had asked him to buy these poisons for her to help her commit suicide. So she certainly didn't defend him in that regard. But during her testimony, she was very, during Miriam's testimony, Miriam was the same daughter who spoke on Wednesday. Miriam was very emotional during her testimony. She cried mostly throughout, and it was a very emotional scene in the courtroom. And Annabelle, when she got to the stand, she certainly, you could tell that she was feeling, very emotional about the situation, but she didn't cry. She was very measured, and she was very calculated in what she said. And, and even, when they asked her to refer to, the defendant and, identify him for the courtroom, she smiled at him. And I think that kind of shows I think that really kind of points to what all these siblings are really, or these kids are really grappling with at this moment is, on some level, like, he's still their dad. And I think that's a really tough thing to have to reconcile with. At this point, they know for sure that he killed their mom, and they've known that he's been lying to them on some level for years now about what happened and why it happened. But I do think it's going to take a very long time, if not, forever, for them to truly be able to, come to terms with the fact that, their dad, someone who, they raised them, who was there for their entire childhood, would have done something like this. I think, I do think that's going to be something that's going to take a little bit.
Yeah, that's Michael Braithwaite, reporter of the Denver Gazette. Michael, that's been my real reaction being a parent watching this, is that the one example those kids should have as a foundational relationship going forward in their lives has been torn apart. I've been thinking this entire time during the trial and afterwards, how do those kids get to a point of trust inside of a relationship, even though some of them are, again, in their 20s and above 18, but even then, they have seen this example of a relationship, someone that they have looked up to their entire lives, as kids, to their father, taking advantage of their mother and eventually ending her life. There's some real tearing apart of foundational trust in any sort of relationship. It's going to be hard for these kids, and I even think about going forward when they meet someone and might want to get involved in a romantic relationship. When you get to that point in the first, second, or third date where, like, tell me about your family, that's a difficult conversation for those kids, that they have to explain what happened. I mean, there are shockwaves that are going to be felt for years behind this. And I also think about James Craig's parents, because, as being a parent, how they have to sit there, and they were there in the courtroom, and they're looking at the idea that despite our best efforts, these are the choices that our son made. And that's hard as a parent too. Yeah, there are a lot of things, there are a lot of lives that have been just forever changed by this.
Yeah, certainly. And something Miriam, the oldest daughter, said in her testimony really struck a chord with me, was that she's married now, actually. She got married, I want to say not too long before this happened, though my date might be a little bit off with that. But she was saying that her and her husband tried to model their marriage after her father and her mother, because she thought they were such good role models. And I think that, even with the children who are married, you're seeing that really, impact it, because now now they're second guessing, the concrete decisions that they've already made. It's a really sad situation all around.
That's Michael Braithwaite. He's a reporter with the Denver Gazette. He's been covering the James Craig trial from beginning to end, was in the courtroom when the verdict was read. Michael, any sense of remorse from Jim Craig upon being found guilty of murdering his wife?
None that I could see. It seemed like afterwards there was a news conference at the district attorney's office, and it seemed like what some of the assistant DAs, district attorneys, said was that they were expecting an appeal in this case, especially, given kind of the length, or, the turnover with all of the defense attorneys that happened, leading up to the trial. And, they were expecting that, there might be kind of another part of this story, but they said that they're very prepared to fight it, and didn't believe that it would be, they would carry much significance. So, I think it's par for the course that he doesn't show much, remorse, especially showing little to no emotion when the verdict was read. He was very stoic as he was handcuffed and led out of the courtroom. Like, I think that's kind of, it's an indicator of just how he's treated this entire situation. He was, he poisoned and killed his wife, and then while in jail, he tried to cover up all the evidence and bribe people to lie on the stand, in his favor. Those brazen acts are not of someone, I think, who would show remorse at this point in time. I think they're of someone, personally, I think they're of someone who's past it at this point in time.
Can you tell us what the sentencing has been? Will Jim Craig ever see freedom again?
No, he will not. He was sentenced. So he was convicted of first-degree murder. That's in Colorado. It's an automatic sentence of life in prison without parole. And then there were 5 additional charges. 2 of them were solicitation to tamper with physical evidence. So he tried to convince people while he was in jail to plant and or make up evidence to support his claim that Angela, his wife, killed herself instead of he killing her. And then he was also found guilty on 3 counts of solicitation to commit perjury, and that was he tried to bribe people while in prison to pose as witnesses who were friends of Angela's and lie on the stand. And so he was sentenced to life in prison without parole for the first-degree murder count, and then 33 additional years to be served consecutively for the additional counts. And that was a maximum sentence, the district attorney said afterwards.
That's Michael Braithwaite. He's a reporter with the Denver Gazette. Michael, you've been following this from beginning to end. Does this conclude your following of the case? Any chance that you may actually have a courthouse interview with Jim Craig? Is that something that you would want to pursue?
I mean, I certainly wouldn't be opposed to it, and we're looking at other, kind of areas of coverage afterwards, and seeing what the fallout from this is. But this certainly concludes maybe more of the sprint, as I might characterize it, of this trial, which many expected to actually continue through the end of this week, but before. The prosecution rested their case on Monday after calling 48 witnesses to the stand, and the defense called 0. And so many thought that, with the defense calling witnesses, the trial would continue through the end of this week, but because the defense didn't call any, it was able to wrap up a few days earlier.
Yeah, what did you think of that strategy, of the defense not calling any witnesses, James Craig not taking the stand? They just kind of seemed to roll over. You were in the courtroom the entire time. We're reading all the accounts. By the way, you're doing a great job at Denver Gazette providing day-by-day accounts of what happened in the courtroom. We're all watching this going, it doesn't seem like the defense has much of a strategy. It's kind of the P. Diddy strategy of, well, yeah, he's a bad guy, but he's just not that bad. Which in this case, in my mind, just admitted to the fact that he was one short step away from killing his wife, because he had a lot of different affairs happening on the side. He was spending a lot of money. He's talking to one woman and then another woman and then planning the execution of his wife. And it didn't seem like a coherent defense strategy. As you're watching the jury respond to the arguments that are being made, what was your sense that the jury was buying from the prosecution or the defense? Give us just a sense of your analysis of the overall strategies on both sides.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, certainly. Well, as it relates to the jury, something that was really unique in this case was that this was adjudicated by Judge Shea Whitaker with the 18th Judicial District, and she allowed jury questions at the end of every single witness testimony. So the jury was able to submit written questions before all witnesses left the stand, which was really unique. I'd never heard of that happening before. But it was a very good indicator to show where the jury was at with testimony and how they were connecting the dots, taking pieces of evidence from one person's testimony and, connecting them to another person's. And throughout the trial, the jury proved to be very attentive, and in my perception, very much picking up on the prosecution's arguments and connecting to different witnesses whom they had called up earlier, and, putting together parts of the story on their end before maybe even the prosecution had done it themselves. And so I thought that was a very good indicator of where the jury was at. And so that was also a little bit surprising, because obviously the defense can hear, what the jury's asking. And so I thought that was also a little bit surprising, the fact that the defense didn't call any witnesses to the stand. And I also think it showed during the sentencing. Some members of the jury actually came in after the verdict was read and sat down in the gallery, and they were visibly emotional as the children were giving their statements, and she was sentenced as well. And I thought that was a particularly powerful moment, just because, they were the most privy to everything that was going on throughout, this 2-week trial or so. And so, to see them, sit down and really, get emotional over the fact of this concluding and everything that was happening, and, all of the statements that were being read, I think showed the effect of the prosecution's argument and, maybe the lack thereof of the defense's.
That's Michael Braithwaite. Michael is a reporter with the Denver Gazette. All right, next case that's up, it seems to be like that the state's going to have its attention on will be Barry Morphew. Will you be covering that case?
I'll talk to my editor about that. I'm not going to answer one way or the other yet.
Yeah. Well, you did a great job. I know
Yes,
it was
excellent
a
work.
big commitment on your end to be in that courtroom day after day, and for you to take time, in addition to writing and covering and being present for this historic case, you taking time to join the Jeff and Bill Show and inform our listeners. We sure appreciate it. You can follow Michael Braithwaite and his reporting over at the Denver Gazette. He's also got an X account at MJ Brait, MJBRAIT. You can follow his reporting there. Michael, thank you for taking time to join us this morning.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for having me.
All right, we'll continue. You're listening to the Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's Talk Leader, News Talk 710 KNUS.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. It's that time of the morning and that time of the week that you all been waiting for. It's You Choose the News Loser Edition.
Yes, it's a time of the week where the stories that Jeff and Blake felt weren't worthy of our attention get a second shot at glory. The Loser Edition of You Choose the News.
You are one pathetic loser.
Let's go. Loser! You're a loser!
The Losers Club. Bunch of losers.
You're such a loser. You made me feel like a loser!
She's a loser.
You are such a loser.
Loser.
Yes, La Loser Edition. These stories were passed over by both Blake and Jeff, deemed unworthy of our attention. The headlines I wrote weren't catchy enough, didn't pique their interest, so they come back for a second shot of glory here on Friday, just to kind of close the circle. Maybe there were some stories that you were interested in that we didn't get to. Here is the chance. As always, Blake Olson joins us from the news department. You know how this works. Silly stories, browsing interwebs, and then I give them more ridiculous headlines because nobody in charge is paying attention. Once we found out they wake up at 7 o'clock in the morning, Jeff and I are going to take full advantage of being left unsupervised. Alrighty, gentlemen, here are the returning stories this morning. Headline number 1, quite a street view. Headline number 2, nobody asked me. Headline number 3, old school, new problem. And headline number 4, Arrested Development. Mr. Hunt, your choice.
One of the best movies of all time, Old School.
Old School, new problem, yes. This, we find ourselves in Anchorage. Yes, go streaking. Oh, nobody wants to see that from an old man. Okay. Anchorage, Alaska is where we find our place this morning. Authorities in Alaska saying this seems like an old school issue, but a brand new problem. Federal Bureau of Investigation's Anchorage office said they have were notified by a property owner of an old school bus on the property located at mile 115 of the Richardson Highway. Bus was parked on his property. He went to check it out and said, "Whoa, hey, look at what the hell I found inside. I got to call the authorities about this one." What, per se, did the landowner find inside the old abandoned bus? Nope, not students left there by their bus driver. Dynamite that was at least 20 years old. Yeah, and a lot of it. Said pretty much most of the bus was packed with old explosive dynamite. But because it was so old and it was so close to the highway, they couldn't do a controlled explosion there. So the team had to go out there, remove the dynamite, go to a more appropriate location, and dispose of it by throwing it down the toilet and seeing if the toilet would break. No, that's just what the kids do. So, yeah. So basically, yeah. But the idea is, yeah, the dude's like, "Hey, look, old bus." And oh my God, that's, yeah. And there were just piles and piles of it in the back, all stored in these little boxes and things.
Oh,
Not
wow.
like Acme, but yeah, kind of spooky. Okay, Blake Olson, sir. Quite a street view. Nobody asked me, or Arrested Development.
Nobody asked me.
Yeah, nobody asked me. That's what a 27-year-old Indian man is planning to argue when he takes his parents to court. Yes, the Mumbai businessman Raphael Samuel is saying he is suing his parents because of what they did to him. What possibly do these parents do to cause, according to the 27-year-old, a lifetime of suffering and angst and anxiety? Well, it's simple. He was born. Yes. He's suing his parents, saying that he never asked to be born. It was not a decision he was involved in. Yeah, it was a decision he said he was not involved in, and he shouldn't have to pay for it for the rest of his life. There are some solutions for that,
I agree
but
with
that's
him.
Yeah. Now, again, the fun thing is that, guess what? His parents, both lawyers.
Classic.
Yeah.
Classic.
And the mother said,
That's
"I
great.
admire my son's temerity to want to take his parents to court, knowing both of us are lawyers. If you could come up with a rational explanation as to how we could have sought his consent to be born, I will accept my fault in this case." That's his lawyer mom.
That's great.
Yes.
I love it.
Yeah, now here's the thing is, it's a weird part is Samuel's belief is something that is gaining steam right now called anti-natalism.
Yes,
It's
I
a
was gonna
philosophy
say, this
that
was
argues,
the
life is so full of
explosion at the Palm Springs.
Yep, exactly. Life is so full of misery, people should stop procreating immediately.
Yeah, I don't like that part.
No, I don't like that at all. Especially, have you tried the procreation part? It's very fun. It's really fun. Alrighty. Okay. Now, Jeff Hunt.
Yeah, he needs to try it out.
He does. He needs to
Something's
understand.
going on.
There's
Might
some
solve
side
some of
benefits
his
here.
problems.
Yes,
Yeah,
there's some side benefits.
exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Suing everybody.
I know. Okay. Now, Jeff Hunt, sir, your choice. Quite a street view or Arrested Development?
Arrested Development.
Arrested Development here. It's in Old Orchard Beach, Maine. Chief of police in a Maine resort town is called for an investigation into an arrest by U.S. Immigrations and Custom Enforcement. It was a shocking arrest for the town and also involved one of their officers. See, the officer was arrested by ICE. Yes, he was illegal. John Luke Evans of Jamaica was arrested. He was illegally present in the U.S. and unlawfully attempted to purchase a firearm. That's what created the red flag for ICE to go after him. Now, the Orchard Beach Police Department says they don't understand this issue because they actually went through the E-Verify program.
System.
Yes, they went through E-Verify, and E-Verify said dude was clear. It is just fine. He was authorized to work in the country, but then he goes to purchase a gun, and ICE says, nah. And so they've arrested him, and they're trying to deport him.
Yeah, New York Times had a big article about how bad E-Verify is.
Yeah, which
like you just use anybody else's social security number.
Yeah,
and
it doesn't matter.
You're good.
But again, I think as we've talked with some of our listeners and some of the texters, that E-Verify is not really supposed to work. That they're not looking at enforcing it. They're not looking at really going after the employers. So it's not supposed to actually do what it's supposed to.
Fascinating.
Yeah, I know. Okay, and we've got just enough time to do quite a street view. They always say that when you're selling your home, it's location, 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 but also the view out the window and the view on the street is incredibly important. That's why an Argentinian man was very angry and sued for compensation from Google Street View after they caught him naked in his window. So, yes, you could go on Google Street View and see naked man right there. Now, here's the fun part.
Oh, I love that. To be able to sue one of the biggest companies in the world.
Yeah.
Over that.
Here's the fun part is that also he says that the reason that he deserves compensation is because it's held him up for ridicule and mockery inside the local community. Because he's a policeman. He was captured in the buff. Yes, from behind in the small town of Argentina in 2017. His house number and street name are also easily visible. Along with his buttocks and other parts of his body. Yes.
I was going to say because he wasn't circumcised.
Yeah, exactly. No, they only saw him from the rear view. So it was just, it was just a vertical smile. The appeals judge concluded that he was due $12,500 for the embarrassing exposure. Yeah, that was it. That's all it is, to be caught naked by, However, I will say that the other day, I was out I was doing something in the driveway, and here comes the Apple car driving by.
You mooned it?
No, what I did is, as I was driving by, I stood there, and I took both hands, and I pointed at my crotch. Just because. Yeah, just like, I'm hoping that gets through at some point or another. I'm just saying, it's going to be an Easter egg for someone out there.
Or at least you didn't pull out one of your snakes.
Yes, exactly. Oh, yes, especially when I'm out there alone. I see where you go to that one, sir. Bum. Okay, that's the end of You Choose the News.
Bill,
I
love the fact that you proved that no matter what age, men still can revert back to being middle school boys.
Oh, absolutely. Pull my finger.
Very quickly. All right. We'll continue. You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
This is 710 KNUS.